Welcome to Empowered Transformation with your host, Christa Dawson. Over the next hour, you will learn about tools that will support your healing process and living a life full of purpose and joy. Now, here is Christa.
Hi, welcome to the Equinox episode 9 of Empowered Transformation. Oh man, today is going to be a powerful one. I feel it in my bones. Today we are going to be breaking down in a little more detail the origins of our behaviors as adults, the origins of excessive thinking, the origins of limiting beliefs, the origins of addiction. And addiction doesn't just have to be around substances. It can be addiction to all kinds of things, behavioral addictions. So before we get any further along, I want to take a moment to ground us in for this hour. So I'm going to invite you, wherever you are, to, whether you're sitting or standing, take a moment to straighten your spine, align your head over your shoulders, with your chin gently tucked as if there's a string attached to the back of your head, gently tugging up on the back of your head, elongating your neck, making that spine nice and long, inviting your shoulders gently back and down, and stacking your shoulders over your hips. Remembering that we're doing energy work all the time, and the subtlest adjustments, even in how we stand or sit, can adjust our energy. Notice that as you sit with your shoulders gently back and down, that it cultivates a nice open chest. Notice if that feels good and supportive. Notice if that feels uncomfortable. Perhaps if you're a person that is in a hard space, feeling poorly about themselves or their lives, we armor to protect ourselves, pulling our shoulders in. So notice if that feels uncomfortable. And if it does, just observe that discomfort without judgment. Allowing your tongue to completely relax in your mouth. This is such a powerful tool in assisting in quieting the mind and quieting the body. Allowing your jaw to relax. Placing your hand gently over your heart center. And bringing your awareness into your body. Putting a gentle smile on your face. This activates all kinds of healing in your body. And know that my intention for taking on this radio show and doing this radio show was to bring tools. After my experience with energy psychology and how it changed my life, I felt so strongly the need to bring these tools to people. Understanding that you are a multidimensional person and healing will happen for you on multidimensional and multiple layers. You have thoughts, you have a body, you have emotions, you have an energy body, you have a soul. And that healing process is best supported when we step into a compassionate relationship with ourselves and all of these aspects of ourselves. So talking alone or understanding why you do the things you do frequently isn't enough. So these tools and energy psychology, which is the focus of this series, helps grow your understanding of this process and gives you tools to begin to start using this compassionate companionship with yourself as you move through your life and through your pains. So it's my hope that you walk away from this hour with tools, that you walk away with a deeper understanding of yourself and your developmental needs. Know that just as your lungs were created to receive air at birth, your nervous system was designed to receive safety and unconditional love. I hope that you leave this hour feeling hopeful, feeling inspired, and most importantly, feeling more compassionate for yourself and others. So I invite you now to take a nice deep breath in through your nose, breathing in this intention, and a long, slow exhale out. Allow yourself to arrive. Welcome. So today I bring back my dear friend, Tabatha Bird Weaver. She is a duly licensed marriage and family therapist and professional counselor in the state of Oregon. She is certified by the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology since 2009. She is a clinical fellow of the American Association for Marriage and Family, where she served as president-elect and president for the Oregon chapter. She is a peer-reviewed, published researcher regarding the treatment and transmission of complex trauma. She is the co-founder and host of the popular CPTSD podcast, and she provides clinical and spiritual services in her private practice, specializing in complex trauma, energy psychology, human development, and potential. So with that, I welcome and introduce my very dear friend, Tabatha Bird Weaver, for today's show. Welcome, Tabatha.
Thank you, Christa. It's so nice to be back.
So today is powerful. You're going to be hearing some really powerful information as I was reading over the notes that Tabatha took as we were talking about, which, by the way, Tabatha will be my co-host, my guest throughout the rest of this series, this pilot series. And so you'll be hearing a lot from Tab. And I'm so thankful for that, because she is a wealth of knowledge, and not only knowledge, but a wealth of personal experience. She walks the walk. She does the work and really works to live authentically. And as we were talking about this topic, this idea of attachment, you may or may not have heard the term attachment theory and the importance of attachment. And I think I'd heard about it for a long time before I began to really understand what it meant. And I'm still learning what it meant. And so Tabatha is going to help us grow our understanding of this need that we have, this requirement that we have from the time of birth, even pre-birth, the need, the requirement that we have for healthy, loving attachment and attunement from our caregivers. And at the end, if you didn't get that, some tools and beginning to start to relearn those old habits. So a statement that Tabatha made in our discussions about this, I've written down because it was so powerful, and I want you all to just sit and listen to this statement. Feel this statement. We self-destruct to keep the image of a safe and loving character. So just sit with that for a minute. And this is Tabatha's words, by the way, or these are Tabatha's words. We self-destruct to keep the image of a safe and caring caregiver. Feel that and hear that. Which leads to the creation of habits of avoiding yourself, of despair, through self-abandonment. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about what all of that means. So as you've heard these words, now let's transition into breaking all of this down. So Tabatha, what is attachment? Define attachment for us.
Okay.
From the clinical,
Right. No problem. So this is a very high level view. So if you're curious about attachment, go look it up. There's tons of information on Google. Fundamentally, what attachment is our ability to connect with other people And we learn that from our caregivers. And so there are a couple of different ways to think about attachment. The most common that you hear are going to be secure attachment and insecure attachment. And there's also an idea of disorganized attachment, but we're going to stick with secure and insecure because that's generally broad enough. So secure attachment means that you feel like you have a core to yourself. You know who you are. You know what you like. You know what's important to you. And that was given to you by your caregiver or caregivers, mirroring to you your emotions and your state of being. So if you've ever been around a baby and they smile and make a cooing noise and wiggle, so we smile and make a cooing noise and wiggle, that's the beginning of attachment, because we're reflecting the experience of the child as valid right there. And so if your parents have done a good enough job, and it's really relieving to know that like 30% good parenting is good enough. Ooh, right?
Yeah.
If we've had good enough parenting, then we will come out of our home as adults or young adults securely attached, meaning we will have the confidence and our neurology will support us going out into the world and trying to be a productive and connected member of society. When we are not getting that, we become insecurely attached. And what that means is we don't know ourselves, we don't trust ourselves. Our neurology is probably geared to fight or flight, freeze type responses. And that just makes adulting hard. And last thing before we move on to the next piece, we tend to pass that on through our parenting.
Yes,
and so absolutely. We're talking about generational movement here.
Yes. Yeah. Something that I think is important for people to hear, and again, this idea of attachment, again, kind of nuts and bolts ideas about this. When a baby is born, it does not know how to regulate itself. It's being introduced to all kinds of experiences, the experience of hunger, the experience of maybe being too warm or too cold, the experience of not feeling maybe that baby got put down and doesn't know where that provider is, that caregiver is. So they're introduced to all kinds of new experiences. They are completely incapable of regulating themselves, regulating their nervous systems, which I'm going to ask you actually right now, Tabatha, to explain in a little more detail this idea of regulating. What does that mean? What does that look like?
So if you were thinking about somebody who's dysregulated, which means not regulated, most of us would call that triggered or stressed out or overwhelmed or shut down. Those are words that we use to describe our experience of dysregulation. We all have a window of tolerance, which means we've got a window within where we stay within that window, we can be regulated. And what that means is you're not adrenalized. So your adrenaline system, your fight or flight is not in effect. So that regulation means everything is flowing at the appropriate level for the current circumstance. Okay. Right? Because if you're in crisis, you're going to get amped up.
Right.
Right. But crisis isn't necessarily because you ran out of half and half.
Right.
The morning for the coffee, right? That might be an overreaction.
Right. But for some people who didn't learn how to regulate, it's the small things that can be very dysregulated when you are operating from a place where you are completely dependent on the environment around you to be a certain way to feel safe and comfortable, a desperate need to control your environment. The smallest things can send you out of orbit. It's not a very pleasant way to operate or a pleasant place to operate from.
No, and it really harms your body as well. We can talk about that down the road, but you're absolutely right. It is the smallest things. And some of the things I hear in my practice so that maybe our audience will recognize them as, I don't know what triggered me, or I don't know why I got so upset about that. Or I went from 0 to 60 and nothing flat, and I'm not even sure what was upsetting. That's when we're probably touching into those core beliefs that we're going to talk about in a minute. And you're feeling unsafe, and that fight or flight kicks in. And so you get a shot of adrenaline, which has to go through a metabolic process, right? But that shot of adrenaline is what we feel when we're dysregulated. Some of us get beating hearts, upset stomachs, throat closing, sweaty hands, whatever happens for you physically that is not normal for your body in that moment is dysregulation.
Got it. Love it. So thank you for defining that. So let's go back to babies.
Okay.
Babies, when they're born, do not know how to regulate their nervous systems and are completely dependent on their caregiver. So that, being held by that caregiver, that calm caregiver's message through how she's breathing, how she's speaking, it's in everything that she is doing or he is doing with that infant. That baby is so tuned in in ways that I'm just learning to what extent babies are tuned into their caregivers. So a baby is completely dependent on their caregiver to regulate them. So the baby gets upset about something, it's not sure why. Caregiver picks the baby up, holds the baby, soothes the baby, and helps the baby come back into a more regulated state. That goes even deeper. And tell me, Tab, if this is, so there's attunement as well. So, and again, my own understanding of this growing, a preoccupied caregiver. And I say this with, my fingers are pointing back at myself, realizing how unattentive, how unattuned I was with my own children, preoccupied with my own really disruptive thoughts, whatever, dysregulated state that I was in. Kids tune into that. Babies tune in right down to they're looking at eyes. Explain that to me. Do you know?
I can explain that.
Yes,
so
please.
I think what you're talking about is that when, as infants and in the animal kingdom, other infants have protection immediately. Horses are running within an hour or two. I don't know what the exact number is, right? But they have claws, they have teeth. Human babies don't have any of that. And we also have the longest period of being helpless once we're born. And so really, it's a matter of survival that infant be able to tune in and please and connect with its caregivers. Otherwise, they will leave it. Right. That's why we have that deep gazing that happens and why most of us think babies are adorable. It's a genetic built-in mechanism that we want to care for that child to continue the human species. Right. So a baby possum can cling to the back of its mom, but a baby human has to trust that they will be cared for. And so when you are not getting your needs met, it's hard to trust.
Yes. And know that not getting your needs met doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't being fed or clothed or your diapers changed. It could be from a baby's perspective when or if they feel that parent is projecting or feeling inconvenienced by a need that you have. Then that baby is, like we said earlier, what was the term? We self-destruct to keep the image of safety and care or from a loving character or loving caregiver. This self-abandonment that begins in those subtle messages that baby might be getting if they feel that, if that parent is feeling inconvenienced by having to attend to the baby. So,
for sure. I mean, when you're talking about attunement, Christa, it's the difference between picking a baby up lovingly that's crying and soothing it because you want it to feel better, that child. Then you're going to start checking, does it need food? Does it need a diaper change? Does this baby need anything? It's vastly different than being picked up and lugged around with annoyance.
Right.
It's the difference between I really love you and I love you.
Right.
And babies
what
feel
do you
that
want now? Right.
Yep.
Right. So I bring all of these things up for you to begin to start understanding, or we are talking about this for you to begin to start understanding the kinds of messages that you were getting starting from the time that you were born, whether you remember them or not. So with that, we are going to take a break. On the other side of this break, we're going to be talking about core beliefs, where they come from, and much more. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you suffering from a chronic illness, addiction issues, lack of motivation, a negative mindset, and a lack of purpose? Do you dream of a life full of purpose and the ability to respond rather than react? And what if you could see yourself through the eyes of compassion while you're in the process of creating the life of your dreams? It will be a process. Dreammakers is designed to empower transformation from being stuck and unsatisfied to a life that is moving forward with purpose and joy. You will get clear on your dreams and the limiting subconscious beliefs that block you from seeing them through. You will learn and be supported in implementing tools that develop the mind-body connection and rewire your brain for success and mastery. Dreammakers is a 12-week online course with weekly live Zoom meetings, a book and workbook, access to accountability, and group support. Spots are limited. Experts say that if a person could do one thing to increase health and happiness, expressing gratitude would be it. Gratitude is an easy, attainable way to improve your outlook and begin rewiring your brain for resilience. You will learn the clinically proven benefits of a gratitude practice, why and how gratitude works to rewire your brain for resilience, and most importantly, a simple but powerful way to amplify your gratitude practice that will benefit your mind and body while improving your outlook.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. If you have questions or want to contact Christa, go to ChristaDawson.com. Now, back to the show.
And we are back. So over the course of the break, if you were tuned in, you heard about a couple of programs that I offer, or a program that we are getting ready to launch here in a few months called Dreammakers, which is going to offer you more tools helping you into this multidimensional process of healing. And you also heard about my free gratitude practice that is available to you on my website. Gratitude is an incredibly simple, powerful way to shift your perspective. And so I really encourage you to go and grab that free gift, subscribe to my newsletter so you can be kept in tune with all the latest, greatest things that are going on. You can find me on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So those are places that you can find more of me if you would like to. And so coming back now, we've just introduced the idea of attachment and the importance of attachment for an infant, and understanding that children have a much longer period of needed attachment. And there's a reason for that, because they have great big brains that are having to learn a tremendous amount of information. And in that attunement process, and in those first 7 years, that brain is growing at incredible rates, absorbing core belief structures, which brings us to another a byproduct of this attunement and attachment process. So Tabatha, define this core belief structure.
You bet. So this is called a lot of different things in a lot of different industries. In psychotherapy, we talk about core beliefs being beliefs that are so deep inside of you, you don't know that they are running your life, basically. So a very common example of that, these are also called limiting beliefs in other versions of healing work, right? A really common example of that is that I am worthless. And that most people wouldn't say that right off the top. Maybe some of you would, or maybe you've been there before and are not in that. But that is just an example of a core belief. So if you were approaching your entire life as if you were worthless, you are going to have a lot of people run over the top of you. You are going to have a lot of trouble figuring out who you are and how to take steps forward. Of course, there are more core beliefs than that. But the idea here is that it's subconscious so deeply that it runs your life without you even realizing it. Right? And those core beliefs are formed through the attunement process and through the generational patterns that our parents show us, because pretty much underneath every person I've worked with who thinks that they are worthless, so did their parent, one or more. Right. And so that's how that was learned. And it was learned by communicating, you're not worth my time, or you're not worth my energy, or whatever the circumstance was. But core beliefs can drive us 90% of our lives. And core beliefs are the reason we go from 0 to 60 or don't understand why we're so upset about something. Right? Because it's not about dishes in the sink. It's about feeling disrespected. Those, those really deep driving ideas.
Right. And let's, again, because infants, they have to stay in the good graces of their caregivers. Mm-hmm. If they don't, they die. Mm-hmm. And so, like we said earlier, a baby will learn to abandon their own needs, their own thoughts. A young child will learn to abandon their own needs, their own thoughts, their own feelings in order to stay in the good graces of their caregiver.
Mm-hmm. Or to keep their caregiver in a good mood so that they're safe. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So And so again, this runs so deep. And I think a lot of us can go through a large portion of our life without really being aware of how this is playing out in their lives.
Absolutely true.
But when you stop to really sit in with it, and I have to say that one of my greatest teachers in the messages that I now understand that I was getting, that my mom was getting, that, again, this long line of generational wounding, that I caught myself projecting those underlying currents of, belief in the statements and things that I said to my own children. Mm-hmm. And I can remember at one point I said something to my kids, and I knew the energy behind the statement was that of, that's not enough. You're not enough. Mm-hmm. And it was killing me inside, but I didn't know how to do anything different. And so having kids frequently brings you face to face with those messages that you got. And it doesn't mean that you have to harbor all kinds of anger and resentment. You can if you need to. All of those feelings serve a purpose. If you need to draw healthy boundaries with your parent or caregiver or family members. But, oh, man, experiencing that with my own children was a huge piece of me bringing this into my own awareness.
Same here, Christa.
Yeah.
I remember the day my dad's finger popped out of my hand pointing at my kid, and I'm like, oh no, we are not going down that road, right. And it's visceral. I can still feel it.
Right.
So if you have any awareness, I'm just speaking directly to your audience, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. If you have any awareness at all that you are passing on the same stuff your parents did to you, first of all, congratulations, because about half of us in the United States don't even come into that awareness. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and now as the parent, it's your job to fix it. It's not on your kids. Just right. I thought I'd lay that out there.
Right. Well, and I will say too that as I really stepped into my own healing process, that has been the greatest contributor. I wish that I knew then when I was raising my kids what I know now, but I didn't. And so again, holding that compassionate space for yourself, realizing that you have the opportunity to heal. So I'm going to have you define the beauty of trauma is that it is the wound that we have the power to heal, but I'm going to have you define that in just a minute. My healing process has been profoundly powerful for my kids. As I have taken full responsibility for myself and my own healing, that has been exponentially passed on to my kids. So every ounce of healing you do for yourself, you're doing for your children. And that's powerful. Tabatha, I asked you to define something.
Yeah. I think we were talking about defining trauma.
Yes. And the beauty of trauma.
Some days I don't see the beauty of trauma, Christa, but I'm with you. I feel you.
Yes.
Especially when it's my own, right? I think we have a misunderstanding in our culture about what trauma is. And a lot of us think of trauma as an event that has occurred. And there are traumatic events or potentially adverse events, that could be translated into trauma. But what trauma really is an undesirable, overwhelming emotional and physical experience that you have with no support and no context. So nobody's there to help, right? And that either can be because literally nobody's there to help you, or it can be because you don't know how to connect with people from your previous history. But the beauty about trauma is that when we are able to recognize that an event has impacted us and has shaped us, we can then reverse that event, especially through community. And I'm all for individual therapy and figuring that out 100%. That's what I do. But I also know that if you do that without building a community around you that will provide you the safety and the nurturing that you needed as an infant and a child, it won't go as deep as it could.
Yes. And that really speaks to the idea that we, again, are designed to be held.
We are.
In a loving and safe environment, literally, that allowing your therapist, allowing your community, you're developing the ability to hold yourself with compassion, but being in positions and in communities where they're holding you too, because we're designed for it. We're created for it. Absolutely.
Humanity developed itself within the context of community. And in the United States in particular, we have abandoned community, right? And I know that we still have communities and that it is on the uprise again, but we think of ourselves more individualistically and bootstraps oriented rather than community funding things.
Absolutely. And
that hurts.
Yes. Yeah. I've been on my own journey of really, because I asked for it, a better understanding of the importance of community. And so that has been coming through in a really powerful way for me. So how does a person begin to start identifying what their core belief structures might be? How does that play out? Some of the things that I learned is, look at your life. Your life is a direct reflection of limiting beliefs that you have. Not all of the things that you encoded were harmful. There's some good stuff in there too.
Sure.
So tell us, how does a person begin to start unpacking those core beliefs? What does that look like?
I think the first thing that happens is we recognize there's a need to do that, because not everybody does. Some people go through life saying that's just how I am. And they're always in a reactive state, flying off the handle or shutting down whatever the delivery is. But once you recognize, okay, this, like for me, here's a story. One day I was backing out of my driveway and I heard this crack and a coffee mug fell off the top of my roof. And I was so mad that, like, if I could have kicked something, I would have. But I didn't want to break my foot. Right. And so I realized I am like disproportionately angry about what just happened So there's one way. And anger was my thing. Yours might be something else like grief or fear. Those are other ways that you can recognize it. Any of the things that you. So for me,
Addiction.
I was just, yeah, for sure. So where, however you notice things are not quite balanced, that's your entryway, no matter what it is. So for me, it was this dumb thing of coffee falling off the top of my car and me pausing to take a moment and look at my reactivity. And so first of all, recognize it. Second of all, pause. Just take a minute to take a breath and notice what's going on in your thinking, in your body, and maybe in your emotions, but definitely sensations and thoughts. And so I paused. And what I realized was I wasn't actually mad about the coffee because the coffee was cheap. I made it at home. I don't know where I got the mug, so it's not like an heirloom that I had busted. I was mad because my core beliefs were triggered, and they were things like, you're stupid. You never do anything right. Everybody's watching you, which nobody was watching me. Right. But when I paused and started looking at that, it was a real lease on life to begin recognizing those weren't actually true. I have a lot of pieces of paper I paid good money for that say I'm not stupid, but still here I am believing it. And so if your entry is into how you feel, like my heart is pounding again, what's going on with that? Or negative thinking or overwhelm. Those are ways to start identifying what might be triggering you. And that will lead you to the core belief.
Yes. And this really is an unpacking process. This doesn't happen overnight when you're dealing with really deeply rooted subconscious beliefs. It is a long, slow, patient look inward. For me, I almost came in through the back door. In other words, I had awareness, I've been sober for going on 3 years now, but the awareness of, holy smokes, I still have addictive behavior, which means that I'm looking outside of myself for a sense of worth, filling holes within myself. And so when you are able to come into that awareness, like, wow. But again, the most important piece here is that you do that through the lens of compassion. Mm-hmm. You're going to be only embedding those limiting core beliefs even deeper when you come at it with anger, with disappointment, with judgment, with shame, which are all part of the trauma. Mm-hmm. So we're going to step off here with this, whoa. And we will be right back in just a few minutes.
All right.
A little birdie told me Voice America is on Twitter. Follow us at Voice America TRN.
Experts say that if a person could do one thing to increase health and happiness, expressing gratitude would be it. Gratitude is an easy, attainable way to improve your outlook and begin rewiring your brain for resilience. You will learn the clinically proven benefits of a gratitude practice, why and how gratitude works to rewire your brain for resilience, and most importantly, a simple but powerful way to amplify your gratitude practice that will benefit your mind and body while improving your outlook. Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you suffering from a chronic illness, addiction issues, lack of motivation, a negative mindset, and a lack of purpose? Do you dream of a life full of purpose and the ability to respond rather than react? And what if you could see yourself through the eyes of compassion while you're in the process of creating the life of your dreams? It will be a process. Dreammakers is designed to empower transformation from being stuck and unsatisfied to a life that is moving forward with purpose and joy. You will get clear on your dreams and the limiting subconscious beliefs that block you from seeing them through. You will learn and be supported in implementing tools that develop the mind-body connection and rewire your brain for success and mastery. Dreammakers is a 12-week online course with weekly live Zoom meetings, a book and workbook, access to accountability, and group support. Spots are limited.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. If you have questions or want to contact Christa, go to christadawson.com. Now, back to the show.
And we are back. And we left our last segment talking a little bit more about how you might become aware of those core beliefs through awareness of triggers, maybe emotions that are bursting out of you that are not appropriate for what just happened. There are a lot of different ways, maybe awareness of addiction or addictive behaviors. And so this week, for your tip of the week, I'm going to invite you, your tip this week is to notice when you find yourself in those reactive states. Notice if you're feeling emotional, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling angry. Remembering that we have talked about this healing process being a very dimensional process. It's mental, it's physical, it's emotional, it's energetic, it's spiritual, it's all these things. And so for some folks, or for you folks that are unfamiliar with anything outside of your head and your thoughts, which is kind of how our society operates from, this tip is to just simply tune into your body, as Tabatha mentioned in the last segment. When you have those reactive moments, if you can just sit and pause and notice what's going on in your body, notice where you might be feeling tightness or tension, notice awareness of tingling. Does it feel heavy? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? So really taking a moment to honor your body with your awareness, and to honor the fact that every experience you've ever had is not only in your head, but it's also in your body and in your energy field. And so you can do yourself, particularly if you're new to this work, a great service by beginning to understand and tune into your body. So that's your tip of the week, is tuning into the body. So we've talked about core beliefs, and we're going to spend a little time talking in a little more detail about the developmental stages. Mm-hmm. So Tabatha, tell us about the developmental stages and why. Why is it important for us to understand that, or what value do we have from understanding our developmental stages?
Great question. The first thing I would say is that developmental stages are typically thought of as something that occurs in childhood, but developmental stages actually go from birth to death. And I would say conception to death. We're developing physiologically, we're developing emotionally, we're developing mentally. When we're talking about developmental stages right now, really we're talking about that window between in utero and 18, 19, 20, young adulthood, there are chunks in a child's life that are broken down into learnings that they have to master. And there are lots of different ways to look at this. Many people have theories. So I'm going to be talking about one from a man named Piaget today, in case you want to look that up. Fundamentally, the idea here is when you are between 0 and 6 months, you're learning things very differently than when you're 2 to 4 years old. And one of the tasks would be autonomy versus dependence. And we want autonomy. And the way autonomy happens is we don't kick kids out of the nest. We teach them that they can make decisions and trust themselves to take action. Right. And we do that through a lot of different ways. When you get into 4, 5, 6-year-olds, we're starting to learn that there is some mastery. Like we want to feel competent as people. And that's when kids are saying things like, I'll do it myself. That is a demonstration that they're in that stage of learning how to have mastery. So there are multiple developmental stages that you can learn about if you want to look it up online. But the point for this show, Christa, is when the event or trauma that happened to you happened matters. Because if you had trauma or adverse events before you even had words, it has a very different impact on your neurology and on your subconscious structuring than something that happened when you were 14, right? And you had a voice. And so when trauma goes very deep, I usually think it's younger. And so with your idea of compassionate companionship, developmental stages can really work into that, because when you're noticing these things that you want to change about yourself and you come at you harshly, it's not going to help. It's just more criticism and more judgment, right? So here's an example. When I notice that I am in a fight or flight response because of something that has triggered me, I try to be gentle and notice, like, does it feel really, really big? Because if it feels really big, I was probably very small. And so when I talk to myself like I'm very small. And I don't mean condescending, but more like, you're okay. I'm right here. Let's get what you need taken care of. And it can end up helping you learn to love yourself. So I have a book to recommend, and then I will be done. And it's called Growing Up Again. And it is a really, really lovely book that can guide you through reparenting yourself, which most of us are doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about that book. Who's the author? What's it called?
I do not remember, but I can grab it off my shelf in a second. It's right there. It's called Growing Up Again. And what it does is talk about different styles of parenting and how to change, either how you were parented or how you're parenting. But in the back is my favorite part. And it is a breakdown of the different developmental stages, what you were trying to learn during that stage, and how to talk to yourself to learn it now. It's lovely.
It sounds amazing. So just to very simply state it again, the idea, what did I need? What do babies need? More than anything, what they need is to know that they are loved unconditionally, no matter what, that they're not loved based on good behavior. They have to, and unfortunately, this is what they learn. I only get what I need when I behave a certain way. And even that might come with conditions. And so again, understanding that if you didn't get it, your parents didn't get it, and their parents didn't get it. These are long lines of cultural, the way we teach, how we do things that have had generations of effect. The good news is you can stop it. As I began to do the work, I have 2 daughters that are in it. They are doing the work. They're working with therapists. They're growing their mad skills. We talk very openly together about our experiences, and it's been really powerful. So understanding that, and again, for people to understand, there is so much going on in those first 7 years. Huge amounts of development going on in the brain. And so when needs that are required are not met, the byproduct of that is depression as adults.
Yes.
Addictive behaviors, ADD, ADHD, neurologically, when those needs aren't met, or when they are being cared for, or when an infant is being cared for by a dysregulated parent, their brains are not developing correctly.
Right. And, you're talking about, and I totally agree that what babies need, and kids in general, people need, is unconditional love. That can be hard to define for some people. What does that actually mean? And frankly, I started my entire career working in foster care, and I saw a lot of people who loved their kids. They had heart connection. They wanted to be connected. They felt reminiscent about their kids, and they were horrible parents. And I don't mean that meanly, but they were so bad. The state had to come in and take their children. There's I don't always agree with that either. I'm opening up a little can of worms there. But my point is, I have seen parents who feel emotionally loving towards their kids and are not giving them the needs, because what kids need to feel unconditionally loved is continued safety and nurturing, regardless of the environment and regardless of their behavior. And that is not always easy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which means that you as the parent You have to do your own work. And again, confirming your greatest gift to your children is you working on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of working on ourselves, we've cracked open another can of worms. Well, what do I do with this? What do I do with this depression? What do I do with this reactivity that I have? What do I do with these messages that I'm sending my kids that I don't want to send? What do I do with these messages that I say to myself? What do I do with that? And so again, I'm advocating for energy psychology, understanding that this healing process goes beyond the understanding and just talking about it. It's experiencing it on multiple levels. And so tell us, Tab, what are some of your favorite tools to help people to start cultivating these compassionate companionships with all these aspects of themselves?
Well, here's good news, bad news. Right? Good news is you absolutely can do this. You absolutely can. And while it may increase pain in some areas of your life to begin treating this, it will decrease suffering. Mm-hmm. And you'll get to learn the difference between pain and suffering. So I would say pay attention to two things. First of all, get your self-support. If that means joining a community of like-minded people that can support you and be there for you, great. If it means going into therapy, perfect. Whatever you need to do. The second front is start taking care of your kids, because that thing we've been hinting around all this session today, Christa, is that parents must co-regulate their children. They need you to be regulated so they can regulate. Mm-hmm. And so my number one tip for working with and starting to reverse these roles and these patterns in parenting is to remember that the best gold you'll ever get from your kid is to apologize to them. We have studies showing that our kids know when we're lying at 2 years of age. So cut the BS, tell them the truth, say you're sorry, and then get your self-support.
Right. And we can't ignore, in doing that, you're not just doing that for your kids, you're doing that for yourself.
Yep.
It's a reflection of your compassion back to you. So, yes. and owning yourself, taking back your power.
Yes.
So it's powerful. Our hour is almost over. So Tabatha.
Yes.
Where do people find you?
You can find me at TabathaBirdweaver.com. Tabatha is spelled with all A's. And you can also find me at the CPTSD podcast. So if you think that you've had a rough childhood or you've been in a long-term relationship that was harmful to you, there's a lot of free information there about what complex trauma is like. And you can meet me at TabathaBirdweaver.com to look at my programs and therapy services.
Love it. She is a wealth of knowledge and an amazing therapist. And I can say that from experience, I will say that. And you can find me at ChristaDawson.com. You can also find me on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to stay in the loop for both of us on upcoming programs and offerings that we'll have, I encourage you to go to our website, subscribe to our newsletters so that you can be kept in the loop. It has been such a pleasure, Tabatha, having you on the show again today, and I look forward to actually next week. So let's set the stage a bit for next week. We're going to get into more detail, as Tabatha coined my words in the title that I went ahead and used, which I liked. It was, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what this process of returning to wholeness looks like. So we broke down a bit more about what fragments us, where we leave parts of ourselves behind. And then we're going to, in more detail, explain this compassionate companionship and all the layers of our amazing selves. And we'll start that 2-part series next week. So with that, thank you again, Tabatha, for joining us today. And I'm going to have everybody place your hand over your heart center. Put a gentle smile on your face. Rest your tongue in your mouth. Sit up nice and straight, stand nice and straight, and thank yourself for being here today, for honoring yourself in your process. And remember and choose compassion for yourself. Always, all the time, you deserve nothing less. Taking a deep breath in and a long, slow exhale out. Thank you for joining me. Happy equinox, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. We hope you have gained insight into the healing process and added tools to your tool belt. Until we talk again, have a beautiful week.